Don't be alarmed. The quasi-shimmering light before you is a trans-dimensional gateway to other worlds, other voices, other thoughts, and other realities. Up feels like down, and down feels like the number 7 on a Wednesday morning. Don't worry. That quivering, blood-boiling sensation under your eyebrows is all a part of the charm. Welcome to the PCC Multiverse.
And welcome back to another episode of the PCC Multiverse. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here for the PCC Multiverse, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports, Fantasy Football, State of Pro Wrestling, Lakers latest, and also the Lakers fast break. My daughter came up to me and said, "Dad, yeah, you talk to me about all the stuff I do. You're the one that hosts 7 podcasts, different titles, names." I said, just do a few shows here and there. That's just, but I'm leaving a legacy for you. Yes. So you and if you decide to have kids, you can go ahead and hear like thousands of hours of me on there, or you could just let it get sucked up into the internet vortex. You decide. So it is, of course, Gerald Glassford. Great to have you here. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without a good friend indeed. It is, of course, the mastermind, the guru of pop culture. It is, of course, TJ Johnson. TJ, always glad to have you here, my friend, and always glad to have you talking pop culture.
Hey, I'm always glad to do so. Thank you for having me on yet again. I feel honored, privileged.
Well, you're my co-host on the as far as the co-host with the most, the host with the most. I'm the co-host. You're the host. You can whichever. I don't know, however way you want to slice it. Doesn't matter to me. But I thought about that, and I thought about what we were talking about with my daughter, and again, just this is I don't know. It hopefully will be here for some many years to come, and somebody wants to go ahead and know more about me or know more about you, they can just find these shows that week after week we talked about some of the things we really liked, enjoyed, and sometimes argued about as well.
Well, I think that's the fun thing about what we do. They're little time capsules. They're little timestamps of where we are at this certain time at this on this day. So I think they're great. I love being able to go back and listen to some of the old conversations that we've had, some of the old podcasts that I've done, and to see how I've changed or I've grown in that way. And I like to listen to it for the conversation, not because I like to hear myself talk, because I actually hate that part. But I do like to hear the thoughts and, have we changed? Have I changed? Has my thought process changed? Because I truly believe if you're not growing, if you're not learning something new, then you're wasting time. So I always want to continually grow and evolve and move forward and not become stagnant.
I agree with you. It's just like I said, like you said, a time capsule. But yeah, I don't enjoy hearing myself either, especially because I hear myself in post after I hear it. It's like I've already heard myself enough. But every now and then I'll catch myself listening to it like an episode from the past or whatnot. It's just like, okay, all right. Maybe I could have said this differently or that, but it's all right. All right, we'll go from there. But again, just something we can leave our kids and
Absolutely.
our grandkids. There you go.
Yes.
Indeed. Maybe that'll boost the numbers up right there. Absolutely. Future ratings indeed. But it is, of course, the PC Multiverse. Thanks so much again for joining us. Thought we'd go into first what's coming up for the weekend, because one of the things that we'd like to do on the show, on the Friday show, is set people up for the weekend. And we're right now starting out in the summer movies. Your contest, my contest, we're going to go ahead and start looking into some of the things as far as what is trending in the movies. And of course, Devil Wears Prada 2, big success so far at the box office, helping the numbers out as far as my contest is concerned. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays itself out. But Mortal Kombat 2 is also on our list, and that comes out this weekend. This was a movie, curiously, if you remember, TJ, it was moved. Warner Brothers, they put out the videos, they put out the trailers initially, and it got such a favorable response that, Warner Brothers said, let's just push this thing back into maybe a more profitable region, because where it was sitting at in November, if I'm not mistaken, it was a little bit congested with some stuff out there. Now, this is in its own weekend, where it's the main attraction. It still has Michael. It still has, of course, Devil Wears Prada 2 to contest with, as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
Project Hail Mary, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. We're now in the middle of the summer box office, but I don't think it's going to slow it down. Were excited for this to come out back in November. I think people will be excited for this to come out this weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, from what I've heard a lot of really, really good things. It's kind of like a return to what we wanted out of Mortal Kombat. Now, let me be clear. I didn't really have a problem with the first Mortal Kombat. I didn't think the story was all that great, but it was serviceable. Like it wasn't terrible by any stretch of the imagination.
It
And
was one of
it
those
was
marquee movies that came out right at the pandemic, as far as day and date, which angered the industry, but
right.
really was something that I think a lot of people really enjoyed. And it did big on HBO Max.
Absolutely. So to hear that they've taken everything that they did with the first one and then gut at all the slower stuff, if you will. And unfortunately, I think Cole was one of those things that they ended up getting rid of. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know, but I'm speculating that they really kind of focus more on the Johnny Cages and kind of making him the main character, which they kind of did in the first Mortal Kombat as well at some point. But that's another conversation for another day. I think it's going to be interesting to see because again they've cut out all the fat and given us a lot more of what we as the people that enjoy the games and then are enjoying the movies are looking for. So it's going to be fun to see. It's going to be fun to see how they've reinterpreted it for their purposes and I'm just looking forward to seeing anything with Carl Urban. Anything Carl Urban does, I, I just seem to love. So, except for Doom, I didn't like Doom, but that's another story for another day. Nobody did apparently. So,
Nobody did. And of course, right now he's finishing up his final season with The Boys. It's airing on Amazon. I have not seen it yet, so I don't want any spoilers out there. I know that there's a death that people talked about, but other than that, a lot of people are saying it's something. It's not something as far as so far with The Boys, and I'll just leave it at that. With the 1995 movie, though, when it comes to Mortal Kombat, I'm interested to see your thoughts later in the show, how we talk about that. And did you know that Johnny Cage was originally going to be played or originally sought after for Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he chose Street Fighter instead?
I did know that. That's a nice little did you know right there. I did know that, and I bet you he's kicking himself for that one.
Although that Street Fighter is so campy. Raul Julia is so good in that
He
movie.
was so good. He was so good.
And it's so campy and over the top cheesy. I have a warm spot in my heart for that
I
movie.
do
I don't,
too. I don't have a warm spot for his portrayal of Guile, but I do have a warm
no,
spot for
no,
Street Fighter.
that
Absolutely,
was
one hundred
that was
percent.
just like shoehorned in there. They should not
Yeah,
have had him
it was
like that.
terrible. He was not. He was not Guile material. He should have never
No.
been Guile. No.
Everybody else is okay. Everybody else
Yeah.
is okay. Kylie Minogue in there, and
Yeah.
everybody was okay. Ming Na Wen
Yeah.
was Chun Li. Yes,
I was happy with
that's the news
everybody else.
reporter. The news reporter slash so let's get to that later on as far
Yeah.
as the 1995. Let's get back to today. Again, this is a sequel to a big hit on streaming. A lot of good vibes. I mean, again, Warner Brothers didn't change this because of just any type of scheduling issues. They changed this movie from a November movie into a May movie because they really think this is going to be earmarked for success.
Yeah, I think so, man. I'm I'm optimistic because we're starting to see a real renaissance when it comes to some of these video game adaptations. And you're looking at the Fallout series, which now they're on season 2 of the Fallout series. You're looking at now they're doing God of War, these other video game adaptations, the Super Mario Brother movies, plurals, and whatever's going to be coming next year, the unannounced project that they have slated for April, I think, of next year, or something like that. There's a renaissance, if you will, of some of these video game adaptations. And I think what's going to be really interesting is to see if they can continue to push it forward because it's already, if you look back, let's just go back to the old Mario Brothers movie with John Leguizamo. I'm talking about the old one, the Koopa head. And it was terrible, right? But now that we've evolved into really being able to truly treat it as a medium in and of itself and as a viable medium, they're getting better and better. So, like I said, seeing the first Mortal Kombat now, what the second Mortal Kombat is going to look like, I'm just I'm grateful, and I want them to continue to push it forward because I think there's a lot of things that are still coming and that could still be coming that really do lend themselves well to being considered movies as far as game stories. And if we can continue to kind of go in that direction, there's still some really, really good stories that are out there that need to come to fruition. I'm looking at Metal Gear Solid. I'm looking at, Splinter Cell. I'm looking at Mass Effect that you and I have talked about endlessly. So there's a lot of opportunity out there if they can continue to kind of get this right. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yes, and when it comes to what you're seeing with this movie, I'm really liking it, and I'm gonna go see this movie in the theaters. So, if you definitely have thoughts on as far as this movie Mortal Kombat is concerned, Mortal Kombat 2, please let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. I really think it's gonna do well. I don't know if it'll do well. I don't know if you're going to have the same type of you should expect $77 million and $234 million worldwide like Devil Wears Prada 2 got last weekend. But my gosh, if it does anywhere about in 60-70 million dollars domestically and $150 million worldwide, I think that's a great start for this film.
Agreed. 100%.
So what are your thoughts out there on Mortal Kombat 2? Are you going to be seeing Mortal Kombat? Let us know your thoughts as far as if Mortal Kombat 2 is your way of doing things, and it's going to tell you to, the box office is going to tell you to get over here. So please go ahead and let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. And later on, we'll go ahead and mark a little more about Mortal Kombat 1995, indeed, as far as our retro review is concerned and our thoughts on that. And while we're still talking about some good stuff out there in the world of streaming and movies and all that, I wanted to ask your thoughts on this. I wanted to really get your thoughts because, we're at a point during the year. There's usually a gap each year to say maybe it's a time to take off a couple of these streaming services, or maybe it's time to add on a couple stream services. There's usually a gap at every year. There's usually a point every year where Netflix kind of cannot continue the production line of interesting things to go ahead and check out enough to warrant your subscription, or enough to warrant for them to tout them as the industry leaders. Sometimes other streaming outlets seemingly might have better offerings for a month or two. Your thoughts, my friend, on where we're at right now, streaming wise? I mean, Amazon has some interesting things like we talked about just a second with Invincible and The Boys within the past month. We've talked about in the past HBO Max. The Pit has been a great success, and obviously Game of Thrones is coming as well with all the Game of Thrones stuff as well. Harry Potter is coming into the mix. Netflix is going to continue to bring out stuff, but this month looks a little weak outside of what we're going to talk about next with the or in a kind of little bit with the Hulk Hogan doc. Apple TV Plus has some good stuff with For All Mankind, among other things, as well, and Godzilla, the Monsters TV show that they have as well. It just seems like everyone has their own little mix, but is there any one streaming service that could stand out to you right now?
Oh, right now, honestly, I don't think that there is any particular streaming service that can stand on. And the only reason I say is because we're at a bit of a lull, as you mentioned. There's things here and there, but there's nothing that's really like I've got to watch that. I mean, I'm knee deep in Daredevil, so I'm hooked on that right now. Obviously, Daredevil Born Again season 2 has been, as far as I'm concerned, amazing. But I know that the numbers aren't there to back that up, so it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. I just feel like we're at this place now, and I know we talk about it a few times, but people are really being more conscientious about their dollar, and I think there's good reason for it. Right now there's just nothing that's really saying I have to stream this. So there are a lot of ones that I'm looking at personally cutting back on for at least the next few months to until something else really kind of strikes my interest. But I mean, HBO Max is probably one that I'll keep just because of how big of a fan of Game of Thrones I am, and I like to go back to it every so often. Um, It'll probably be if I had to pick my 2 to 3 to really keep, it'd be HBO Max, it'd be Disney Plus, and it would probably be Netflix. So probably the big three. Amazon Prime, I would keep just kind of by default because of, but it's not really for the shows, it's for Amazon Prime. Um, so the shows are kind of like the extra that comes with that. But out of the big streamers, it would be Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max for me personally. Um, but I say that to say, there's just not a lot of content right now that's screaming, watch me on these other streaming networks, other streaming platforms, if you will. So just got to be a bit more selective over the streaming services that we keep because it can get expensive. If you look at the average price for, a basic package, you're looking anywhere between 16 to $20. Um, and that's before you start getting into the, super HDs where you can have three devices streaming at once or three high definition. Like there's so many different plans and so many different options that it can be extremely expensive, even more so than actually just having basic cable. We cried about having a basic cable package, and now here we are being tethered to all the different streaming services and having so many of them that I almost think I would have rather had a basic cable package again. But I digress.
Funny how that is, and you could see it coming. They tempted you in, they brought you in, drew you away from cable with the at that time was package pricing for all the different streaming services 2018, 2019, even into the pandemic a little bit as well. But yeah, once you came out of the pandemic, the prices started rising. And like you said, at this point, you're essentially paying the same, if not more than what you were paying for with a full cable package that you had before. And I don't know if it continually will give you the same type of value. Well, you know what? Actually, value for value, do you think the streaming service is better because of just the fact that there's so much more on demand?
Well, I think, value is one of those intangibles because it's value is going to be different for different people. I'm at a stage in my life where what I find valuable is going to be things that I can do with my family. And so I'm looking for things that have more content geared towards everyone as opposed to, just adults. So I say that to say it's really subjective. If you feel like it's valuable because you're going to get something out of it. So for me, I'll give you a prime example, and we're not talking video games, but we're looking at the Xbox Live and look at the Xbox Game Pass, right? And they obviously the the I can't think of the young lady's name, so forgive me, but she's already made it very clear that Game Pass is too expensive and brought the price down. And they're talking about having different tiers and
Asha
different
Sharma, by the
packages.
way.
Thank you so much, Asha Sharma. I need to do better about remembering her name because she's actually doing a really great job in her first few months. So Asha Sharma, yes. So I say that to say, before there was no real value in it for me personally because I didn't spend enough time gaming or enough time using the services that Game Pass had offered. So it wasn't a great value for me. Some people might have found it as a better value, but now that the price has gone down to just above $20, I find much more value in it now than I did, 3 or 4 months ago when I went down to premium and I was happy paying my little 19.99 or my little $20. And now just a couple bucks more, I have the ultimate, and I don't feel bad about it anymore. So the thing about value is it's really subjective, so it's going to be hard to say. What I can say for me personally is that if there's more content on there geared towards family, then that's where my value is going to lie.
And again, each has its own offerings that they're trying to entice people to stay with it. But yeah, it's getting harder and harder for people to afford all these different channels. Disney, we talk about Disney each and every month on in my house as far as whether or not to retain it. And Daredevil's done, almost done. And then you have what after Punisher, but yeah, they're just I don't know why we want to keep it. It does not make much sense to a lot of people to continue it unless they have young kids that want to go ahead and explore and continue to explore what Disney has to offer. But for adults, it's just harder and harder to justify it unless Hulu just really knocks it out of the park for you. And outside the Scrubs reboot and something else every time, every now and then, it's just hard for any of these streaming services to retain their customers because they're just not putting out enough new things that's catching people's attention.
I 100% agree, but not for me. Disney Plus is one of the ones that absolutely gets played in the household because, again, I have young kids. So it actually leans into being utilized. I mean, I think we use Disney Plus every day at one point or another. So Disney Plus gets heavy, heavy, heavy play. Stars does not. Um, Amazon Prime, again, I kind of have it just because I have Amazon Prime, but it doesn't get as much play. Disney Plus is by far the one that if I had to pick one to keep, it would absolutely be Disney Plus. Everything else is kind of here, you know, here or there. That's not really, it's not consistent.
Absolutely, indeed. So again, I wanted to throw out there, every now and then take a look at the industry itself as far as the streaming industry and how it's trending. But I mean, so many people have left the cable industry as far as they cut their cord per se, and I don't know if they're coming back. But the thing is, as we now get into the fact that people have to pay now $100 for streaming services, we're now at the point even more so what we were 10 years ago with cable. So you just can't win for losing, my friend. You just can't win for losing.
You can't, and that's the unfortunate part. We're just at the stage where every penny counts, and we have to be very, very judicious about where they're going and who they're going to. So
What are your thoughts out there on the streaming services? Which do you like? Which is your favorite? Is there one that you absolutely have to keep above all others? Please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. And speaking of streaming services, one of the things on a streaming service, one of the newer things that came out on streaming services was on Netflix with the Hulk Hogan documentary, which, again, if you're not a Hulk Hogan fan or a pro wrestling fan, again, why would you want to keep Netflix if that's the case? But the Hulk Hogan documentary came out recently, and it would. I guess I'm going to have to see it just because of the fact it's his last recorded interviews before he passed away, and I'll leave it at that. But with the Hulk Hogan documentary, many have laid claim to it. I've already actually seen several stories and several reviews of it, and this doesn't surprise me, and it should not surprise you either, TJ. The Hulk Hogan docu-series, which is supposed to be kind of like a biography, a look at his entire life and career as far as from the time that he started in the professional wrestling business till when he made it big and so on. And of course, the timeline is just all messed up. That's the first thing. It's changed for dramatic reasons. I understand that the one thing that everybody gets out of it is that it's presented very well. Netflix always does a great job of packaging things in the right way. We talked about the Vince McMahon documentary, and there's
right.
the Diddy documentary, and everything is packaged real nice. Now, what's contained within is like I have with the Vince McMahon docuseries is the problem, because sometimes, well, a lot of times it's seen through the wrong pair of eyes as far as how it was navigated. The timeline already, from what I've taken notes on, is extremely messed up from what actual
Mm,
reality in life is. And then Hulk Hogan, who, how can I say this nicely? He's like your granddad, and granddad wants to remember things the way he wants to remember them, and thus things are not always actually the way it actually ended up being. In fact, Hulk Hogan has been known to exaggerate once or twice or 10,000 times, just to be quite frank. And same thing goes for here. Your thoughts, my friend, on this Hulk Hogan documentary? Again, I have to see it. I will see it at some point in time in a not too distant future, but it's Hulk Hogan, man. And with Hulk Hogan, there's always seems to be some caveats. You can never get a straight through timeline the way it actually happened and the way it should actually be told. And that's the part I have.
I think that's going to be the hard part with a lot of these documentaries, and we're even looking at these biopics, and using Michael as an example as well. There's certain things that we come to expect out of documentary, out of a biopic. And the unfortunate truth to that is that you're never going to be able to give everybody what they're looking for in the way that they're looking for it and the amounts of it that they're looking for. You're going to get out of it what you really want to get out of it. And what you don't want to get out of it, you're going to be upset about it not having. And that's not to say that there's right or wrong to that, but there's nuances to that. I think what we have to remember is that, yes, he is like that granddad that was, back in the day, and certain things were done certain ways back in the day, and it's just not that way anymore. And he, like a lot of people, had a hard time adjusting to the new norm, for lack of a better term. With Hulk in particular, he came up in a very interesting time where, things were not as things were not as easy going as they are now, or maybe they were a little easier going back then. I guess it kind of depends on how you want to look at it, whatever lens you want to, put on that. But there are certain things that we've come to learn about Hulk that were not necessarily present, or that we didn't know back in the day. And knowing that type of stuff now, and knowing who he was and the type of person that he portrayed himself to be, and learning different intimate things about his life that we didn't know before. The documentaries are always going to hit a little bit differently, and especially once other things have come to light, then they're definitely going to be hitting differently. He's obviously said some things in the past that have really come back to not serve him well, not serve his image very well, and rightfully so. There are things that were pretty abhorrent things to say. What I found very interesting is that I recently found a clip from Mark Henry where he spoke to Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, after the incident with the use of the racial slur, repeated use of the racial slur. And he asked Hulk, he's like, all this time that we've wrestled together, all this time that we spent together, did you really have a problem with me for the color of my skin? And he says, he told him, according to Mark Henry, and obviously I wasn't there, we weren't there, but according to Mark Henry, Hulk said no. He made a stupid decision, and he because he is who he is, he doubled down on it. He didn't mean to do it. And so Mark Henry says, well, why don't you just go apologize? And he's like, well, my team has said to just leave it alone and let it go. And then Mark Henry was like, but you hurt a lot of people. You were a lot of people's hero, and you hurt a lot of people. And he wouldn't backtrack, he wouldn't take it back. He actually, so then Mark Henry said, so you'd be willing to let Terry die to allow Hulk Hogan to continue to live. And it was a very somber thing for Mark Henry to say, but it was also very revealing, because they get so caught up into this, who they've become, this persona that they've created.
Richard Flair.
Yeah,
as Ric Flair.
There you go. So they get so caught up in this persona that they've created, in this world that they've been living in for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years, that the who they were is gone, and it's replaced with who they've become. And when you have biopics and biographies, you're still trying to learn who they were, and then they're still trying to tell the story through the lens that they want to tell it in. If they want to focus on the image, the icon, if they want to focus on the person. And it's tough because, again, like I said at the beginning, people are going to want different things from it, and you're not going to be able to please everybody about it. Again, no different than the Michael biopic. So I'm mixed about it. Hulk Hogan was a childhood hero of mine. When I thought of WWF at the time, I thought of Hulk Hogan. And obviously, as an adult, a grown man, African American, who has boys, has children, my view stance on my quote unquote heroes, those have to change and grow and evolve. And, we have to be willing to grow and evolve with those. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure if I want to see the documentary, but part of me kind of wants to, but not a huge part of me, if you will.
Yeah, the same here. I mean, I probably will see it, just because I want to see, as far as from the lens of, okay, how well was it made? Everybody talks about the production, the way it's wrapped and whatnot. Will I spend 4 hours? I think it's 4 1 hour episodes. Will I spend 4 hours rolling my eyes? Yeah, I have no doubt about that, because again, that's what Hulk Hogan has been throughout the majority of his later years in his life, is telling these tall tales. One more Andre tale of him at 700 pounds or whatever, and all the stuff that supposedly he said, which I don't think he said, or did or whatnot, or actually, again, the first slam ever on Andre by those type of things, just stop. It's just not true. It's just not true. And he knows it's not. He knew it wasn't true. And the fact that people, I think it's alluded to, that the industry would have been dead without him, and that's not true either. It would not have been as big. You could say that. Would it have been big as soon it was? You could say that. But again, there's just so many things that come along with this documentary. You have to go ahead and put sight out of mind and just see it, if it's something that still will entertain you going forward. But yeah, if you don't want to see it because of all the stuff that's gone wrong, what he said, what he did in life, what he said in life, I couldn't blame you one bit. I cannot blame you a bit, even if if you are a wrestling fan or not a wrestling fan. But again, to those that are uninitiated on the world of Hulk Hogan, viewer beware is what I'll say. Viewer beware, because the truth is not always what it will be said on that show.
Oh, we also have to remember, we're not doing a documentary on Terry Bollea. We're doing a documentary on Hulk Hogan, and that tells you enough of itself, right? It's no longer about Terry. So to Hulk Hogan, yes, he was the one that slammed Andre the Giant first. He was the one that slammed the 700-pound giant of a man. Because again, this is Hulk Hogan. This isn't Terry. We're not doing a documentary on Terry. We're doing it on Hulk Hogan. And so, as far as Hulk Hogan is concerned, these are all factual things. He's said them enough times. He's repeated them. He's regurgitated it enough where it has become who he is. And oftentimes, the truth is stranger than fiction, and we have to be willing to just buy into it. If we're going to watch a documentary on Hulk Hogan, be prepared for Hulk Hogan-esque things, and not Terry Bollea, but Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see if people see it. I mean, actually, it got a really good viewership right behind Raw last week when it debuted. So if you are a fan of this documentary or not a fan, let us know why. If you're going to watch it, not watch it, but you want to know your thoughts on the Hulk Hogan documentary, but please let us know. Is this something you might be interested or have watched already? Please let us know your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, staying within the realm of pro wrestling, we thought the WWE cuts, the dust had settled. That was incorrect, because late last week, we got word that there were more WWE cuts. And while JC Mateo and Talatanga were not surprising, because while the Wyatt Six was not a group that the WWE was willing to get behind, it seemed like the MFTs were not that much better on the food chain for wrestling in the WWE, as far as I'm concerned. And so they whittled that group down a little bit. But also, they approached Kofi Kingston, the company did, TKO WWE, and also Elijah Woods Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods. I've got mixed up with my characters there. Xavier Woods. They approached those two to restructure their contracts, and they said, no, we just want out. If you don't want to pay us what we are getting paid right now, it's time for us to go. And so they move on, my friend. It still seems like, I know that to the response from AEW wrestlers, it's like, yeah, we can't wait to get you over here. Yeah. I still don't think that was the most egregious WWE cut. And I mean, no disrespect to any New Day fans out there at all. I think their time had come and gone. The fact that they had been relegated to backstage skits for the most part in the past year should tell you all you want to know about what their situation was and what their standing was. The Big E entry also ultimately did a lot for the the downfall of that team as well. Your thoughts on New Day? I still think Kairi Sane was the most egregious cut because of the fact that she was in an active storyline at the time of her removal.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, though, my friend, on the New Day? Again, their record of 13 WWE tag team titles should not be underestimated and should not be discounted at all. They are a great WWE tag team, but will they be remembered as a great tag team in the pantheon of tag teams? Or were they, as we talked about before we went on the show, a benefactor of when they became a tag team?
Well, I think that being being a champion is all of that combined. It's the right place at the right time, and you have the right push. So I think all the champions really have benefited from being at the right time for them. Now, I think there hasn't been a tag team that's benefited more of that than the New Day, and for better or for worse, that's going to be their legacy. They were 13-time tag team champions, absolutely. But I don't think anybody really remembers them as 13-time tag champions. I think they're going to remember them for the skits, the backstage shenanigans, the fun that they brought, because they brought a lot of fun. They brought a lot of excitement, but it wasn't because they were amazing athletes. It wasn't because they were, or I shouldn't say we're not amazing athletes. All the wrestlers are amazing athletes, but it wasn't because they were particularly good or particularly great. They happened at a very, very particular time, a particular point in time where the tag team division was just very, very, very weak. And they absolutely benefited from that. So the real question becomes now is, yes, how does their legacy stack up when you look at the pantheon of tag team champions? You look at the Hardy Boys, you look at the Edge and Christians, you look at DX and their various tag team iterations.
You go to Midnight
between
Express, Road
Midnight
Warriors.
Express, Road Warriors. So like when you look at this upper echelon of tag team champions, um, they probably won't be thought of in that way. And maybe they will with time. Time tends to either cure all wounds or really kind of shows you what they thought of you. So time will tell. And maybe they'll be back. Maybe they'll be back at some point when they've tried another production or another group, another wrestling uh, company, if you will. And either they're gonna love it or they're not gonna love it. But I think what's important is that we appreciate the contributions that they've given us and where they were, and just understand that something. I'm huge on movie quotes, right? We talk about this all the time, and I think one of the best things that was ever said, besides the whole "you either die the hero, live long to see yourself become the villain," was when Ultron and Vision had their conversation at the end of Avengers 2. And, Ultron was giving him the whole, thing about how he's so naive and da 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 right before, Vision destroyed him. But Vision said, what makes something beautiful is the fact that it doesn't last. These runs, these people are getting older, and unfortunately when there are no more stories to tell and they're kind of just there taking up space, you have to start looking at really making a difference. And the thing that makes something beautiful is the fact that it can't last forever. So these legendary runs that people have been on, you look at the John Cena Fell World Tour, you look at all of our wrestlers who have moved on and moved on to different things. It doesn't last forever. And it's no different with the New Day. They'll ultimately get their time where they're inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame and be able to really be appreciated for their contributions at that point. But now is the time for them to move on and try to find something else and reinvent themselves and decide who they want to be moving forward. And they deserve that. They've earned the right to be able to do so.
So is that your most egregious WWE cut of the recent WWE cuts to date, or maybe did you mean Kairi Sane like myself, or is there another Aleister Black and Selena Vega? Is there another cut that you thought which was the most egregious cut of this? Because I think they might have settled in on it. unless Grayson Waller or because he was associated with the New Day, or somebody else gets cut. Do you think which was the most egregious cut to you?
I think because New Day was probably the most prominent of the group that was cut, it would probably be the New Day. A lot of the other ones that were cut really didn't have anything going on, and neither did New Day. Let's be very clear; they didn't have a real rivalry. Once Big E suffered his injury, and you know they got reduced from a trio down to just a basic, a tag team. Because even though they were tag team champions, it was a trio, right? We already know that there were three of them. But once they really got down to just two, and they kind of lost that mojo because Big E brought a lot of the excitement, a lot of the charisma. Um, it changed the dynamic. So it's not like they were really doing anything with them. So I think they're probably the most egregious of the cut, but just because of the pedigree that they have behind them, because of the resume that they have, that would make them the most egregious. But to be honest, none of the people that were cut really had anything big going on. It'd be different if we said that they decided to cut Roman Reigns like that, and that's egregious. That's a different conversation. But none of these, unfortunately for them, and that's not to say anything ill of them. They just didn't have anything going on. The New Day would probably be the most egregious.
Okay. I don't say I blame you at all, especially because they're given their track history and given the fact they're a 13-time world tag team champions. I still say it's Kairi Sane because she's the only one of this group that had something active going on. And in fact, there's a match happening at Backlash this weekend that fair. Roots itself in a person that's no longer there. And guess what they're going to be chanting? What's been trending worldwide? Guess what they're going to be chanting during that match? They already set up Io Sky and Asuka for failure. That match is going to be no matter how good technically that match is already a failure by what they did to both those ladies by letting go of Kairi Sane. Just absolutely already messed it up.
That's fair. I can understand that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they will go out there and it doesn't matter. They could do 10 moonsaults in a row. They could go ahead and break every table. And guess what they're going to be chanting out there?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
100%. 100%, brother.
It's like Sony when they do not like a video game, they just send it out there to die. And WWE, when they don't really like it or don't really back it, they're just going to send you out to die, and that's what they're going to do on this weekend with Backlash, and we'll see. But in regards to Roman Reigns, after his title matchup against Jacob Fatu, he's gone for a month. So it wouldn't cutting him be like not missing him anyways? I don't know.
Well, what's interesting about him being quote unquote gone for a month is that they kind of rebuilt this whole thing on him being a full-time wrestler again. And
not going to Europe. There you go. All right. Sorry. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely
TKO,
crazy.
man. I'm so glad they bought WWE. That's sarcasm, folks.
Yes, that is definitely sarcasm indeed. But if you have thoughts on the New Day being let go by the WWE, Talatanga, also as well JC Mateo, or any of the cuts that are going to have happened, probably going to happen or two as well. They could be more on the way. Please let us know your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, before we head on out, we touch on some video games as you and I love to do. First off, because you have the PlayStation. And I got a call the other day from my sister. And it's usually all our calls are pleasant to each other after all these years. There's really, not much to argue about anymore because we're not trying to fight for some type of candy anymore. Mom's going to get mad at you or something like that. I'll go ahead and tap that, anything like that. All our calls are usually very pleasant, except for one. I just had one with her recently where she called. She was concerned because her son, my nephew, purchased a game recently, and it gave a certain disclaimer that you have to check back in online within 30 days or this game is no longer able to be used. And it was purchased digitally, which is the DRM, digital rights management debate. Now, Sony, in an act of PlayStation, in an act of maybe self-preservation or to try and fix a glitch which had come about where people that have jailbroken PlayStations were buying games and able to go ahead and return those video games digitally, of course, but still be able to keep the game and still be able to play it and move on. And to try and avoid this, they went to for a certain period of games that were purchased, I think, with March or April, I think was the first dates of those, that you have to go ahead and check in online with that game within 30 days or you lose that game, which blew up the gaming world for a period of time. Now it's since calmed down because they understand, a lot of people do, why they did it. But does this open the door? This really opens the door regarding the DRM debate and what Sony or Nintendo or Xbox or Steam may do at some point down the road with even more restrictions or more hoops that you have to go through because of DRM.
Great question. Remember there was a guy. What was his name? He was the head for Microsoft. What was the guy's name that with the E3 conference? Was it? Do you remember the one where they, where Sony had the big knockout blow where this is how you share games and you hand the game over to somebody else. And
Don
that's
Matrick
how
was the DRM
that's the
guy
guy, Don
for
Matrick.
Xbox, and Shoei Yoshida and forgot the
Don
American representative.
Matrick. Yep.
For Sony and PlayStation, they just
Mhm.
handed the disc over to each other and got the biggest.
Yep.
And that was the end of that
That was the end.
console generation.
It was
right
dead
there,
in the water. Dead in the
right
water.
there.
So
right
what's funny about that is that, Sony, I think in their own way, or PlayStation, maybe not Sony, but PlayStations, they knew why Microsoft was doing what they were doing. They understood it, but they also were able to read the room and say, we're going to not do that. And this is why. I guarantee you that if people had responded positively to what Microsoft had said, they would have absolutely jumped on board, jumped on the same bandwagon because they understood what was coming. They understood that, having having an always online or always accessible to online thing was something that, the world was leaning towards with cell phones and so on and so forth. There's always a connected world anyway. So they were leaning into that. But because they read the room, they decided not to do that. So now you fast forward, 13 years later, and here we are talking about the fact that Sony just tried it. They tried it. They tried it. And they were met with the same response. And so they very quietly kind of backtracked. Now they can spin it however they want to spin it. And that's their PR team's job to do so. And kudos to them. They told everybody to stay quiet. Don't say a word. Let this play out. Let's see what everybody says. Let's see how they respond. And then we will make our response based off of that. And sure enough, everybody at Sony kept quiet. They didn't say a word. They just let it play out and they let themselves get dogged and let themselves get dogged. And then finally, this was just done because of X, Y, and Z. This is not something that's going to be a permanent feature. This is not always going to be happening. Da 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 da. I think we are in a very interesting point in time where this whole debate upon physical versus digital DRMs is going to pick up steam yet again because we're still gaining traction and gaining steam towards going to a digital only world. I mean, we already have digital only consoles available to people to purchase, and the vast majority of games that are being purchased nowadays are being purchased digitally as opposed to having a physical media presence. So there is some legs behind this debate, but it's things like this, it's moments like this where it really causes people to say, this is what we're talking about. At any point, they have the right to take it away from you. We really took for granted being from the 90s or, before that you bought a game, you owned the game, it worked. You didn't have to download anything extra. You didn't have to pay a subscription fee. You didn't have to buy any DLC packs or pay to wins. You bought the game. That was the game. That was it. You go and play the next game. You buy the next game when it comes out. No DLC for you. Just buy the game. We really had it good back then, and we didn't realize how good we had it. And now here we are, where everything's being done digitally. Rights are being sent digitally. extensions or add-ons are being sent digitally to the games that we already own and already have purchased, or I should say purchased, not own, because clearly we don't own any of it if they decide to turn it off. You look at games that have been games that people have paid their hard-earned money for that they no longer have the opportunity to go back and play. I'm looking at a game like Anthem. People paid their hard-earned money to play the game Anthem. And now because the service has been shut down, it is a dead weight game as opposed to giving the people that have owned it access to have their own servers or just access to their own world with offline world, even if there's nothing to do in said offline world, but just a bunch of side content that you would do with everybody else. You just do it by yourself now. You don't even have the opportunity to do that because the servers are off and you no longer have access to being able to utilize that game. So the game that you spend money on, you can no longer play. There's a frustration with that. And I think there's a growing sense of a lack of ownership and realizing, hey, we're buying these games, but we really don't own it. So what's the point of continuing to purchase things digitally if we're really not going to be able to play them whenever we want to play them? I think there really needs to be a conversation to be had for digital rights management and the idea of ownership, or the idea of being able to utilize a product that you spend money on being able to utilize for however long you choose to utilize it. You didn't pay a rental. You paid to be able to use that title whenever you wanted to use it. And if that means 25 years from now, I want to be able to go back to this game and download it, I should be able to do that. I want to be able to go back to this game and play it, I should be able to do that because it's the game that I purchased with my own hard money, my hard-earned money. So Sony really just again read the room, and rightfully so. They said, okay, let's see what happens. Oh, they don't like it. We're gonna rein it back. It's a very smart business move to do, is from the standpoint of they're listening to their consumers in that way. Now, obviously, we can have a different conversation about how they're really not listening to their consumers for a different thing. But for this, they heard it, people didn't like it, and they said, okay, all right, we were just kidding. They dipped their toe in the water and they pulled back and said it was too cold. So, or too hot, I guess, depending on how you want to say it. It wasn't just right.
So, what are your thoughts out there on the DRM debate? I understand why it's in place. I understand why Sony went about doing it, but they did not communicate it very well to their audience yet again. So, what are your thoughts out there? Is PlayStation hurting its own market out there with the DRM issue and constraints? Please let us know, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. But before we head on out, my friend, a couple last notes. 007 New Light, which will be coming to a PlayStation 5. DRM available, added onto it, I guess, as well. That's maybe part of one of the bonus packs that you get, a DRM. Saying you have to re-up it in 30 days, but that is coming out later this month. They had some previews last week. You and I are excited. Again, we'll talk more about it later this month, but I'm telling you, 007 New Light is shaping up to be one of the big releases of this year.
100% agree with you, G. After looking at a lot of the previews, and I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's any surprise, but you were absolutely more excited about it than I was. But I can honestly say that I have 100% bought into the hype. The game looks phenomenal. The gameplay looks phenomenal. Some of the things that you looks like you're able to do really look good. The fact that they're tapping into a very young Bond, a very inexperienced, maybe a bit immature Bond, it's going to lend itself to some very interesting and very fun gameplay. And I'm absolutely looking forward to it. IO Interactive, having worked so hard on the Hitman series, they really do have the espionage part of it down. But now being able to utilize more fisticuffs, more kind of bombastic set pieces, and just these bigger moments, it's going to be a lot of fun. And being able to do so as a super spy who doesn't even know the heights of his powers yet, but is really having fun navigating that. That's going to be a good blast. That's going to be a good time. It looks phenomenal. I'm not a fan of the facial model that they use. I don't know. He just seems a little weird to me. Maybe because I remember the Pierce Brosnans and the, obviously the Daniel Craigs, and I don't think the guy he looks a little Jason Bourne to me. More so the Jason Bourne than James Bond, but. Regardless of what this face model looks like, I'm looking forward to playing the game. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It really does, and it's definitely got legs for a game of the year. Now it's going to be very hard to be game of the year when you've got Wolverine and this little game called Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out. But it definitely looks like it's going to be a great time. Regardless, it looks a bit of Uncharted mixed with Hitman. So a Hitman Uncharted type game. Looks good.
And with Forza Horizon 6 and other games coming out in a pretty good month of May, especially the back end. Yeah, definitely looking forward to see how it stacks up when it comes out on May 27th. But if you have excitement like we do over a 007 New Light, because I am going to probably pre-order it. And I said that on the Monday show. First time since Uncharted 4.
There
Yeah,
you go.
there you go. So what are your thoughts out there on 007 New Light? Are you interested in getting it? Please let us know. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. But before we head on out, as Mortal Kombat 2 hits theaters, the original movie with the namesake that came out at the height of Mortal Kombat's I guess arcade popularity came out to theaters back in 1995. And while we remark about how campy and how fun Street Fighter that movie was, Mortal Kombat is considered leaps and bounds that original film so much better as far as the film is concerned. Your thoughts on a retro review of Mortal Kombat 1995 before we head on out?
Oh man, Mortal Kombat 1995. I think the fun thing about that movie was it was it was fun. It was very, very fast, and was way better than I feel like it had any right to be, if that makes
Agreed.
any sense. I mean, with that being said, I mean, we understand that the bar was set very, very low for video game adaptations. You and I spoke about it earlier.
The Mario
But
Brothers movie had really set it low.
that's my point. So we were already way, way low as far as the bar is concerned. And of course, it didn't just go over the bar, it leaped over the bar. It really leaned more into having style as opposed to depth. It really leaned into what we were looking for out of it. We're looking for the fantastic fight scenes. The music was some of the, the better parts of it. A lot of the techno stuff that they came from that movie, we still utilize today. We'll still listen to today. It's still one of the best video game adaptations made. Again, low bar, but it very, very, very much cleared it. It understood, I think the big thing about it, it really understood the source material. And this is where you look at the director, who was Paul W.S. Anderson, and
Mhm.
I don't understand how he got that so right, but then went so far left with, his other video game adaptations, because he became the guy to kind of do them between the Resident Evils. I think he had another one. Um, I think there was another one that he did, but Resident Evil was one of those ones that was so far from the source material that we're like, well, what happened? You nailed it with Mortal Kombat, and now you get to this, and it's not close to it. It was just simple. It wasn't a bloated dump of lore and all this backstory. It was simple, high stakes, Earth versus Outworld. That's it. It kept it really basic. I think
Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter. Thank you. That was the other one, and that was again with Mila Jovovich. So it's like I don't know what happened when he got with Mila,
Well,
that all of a
they're
sudden,
husband and wife. Wife
yeah,
is
that's
wife.
my point.
Yeah.
I don't know, something happened there where it's like, I don't want it to be like that. Okay, well, we're gonna change it. So I say that to say he understood the assignment with Mortal Kombat, and the cast was amazing. You're looking at Robin Shaw as Liu Kang, Christopher Lambert as Raiden, but the very best was Kerry Hiroki Tagawa as Shang Tsung. His he absolutely stole the show. Him looking at Liu Kang's character and looking at his little brother at the time and saying, "Your soul is mine." Like, that's iconic. It's so much so that in Mortal Kombat 11 they put his likeness back in the game with his voice and everything. Like, that's how big of a deal it was. Like, it was just really, really well done. And then we already talked about the soundtrack. The Mortal Kombat theme song still resonates to this day. I could still play that song and get hype before a match in Mortal Kombat. Like, it's a classic for a reason. And then the fight choreography was pretty basic, but it was clean. It was clean. It wasn't a whole lot of shaky cam. A lot more practical than what wasn't. So there's that. I think the worst thing about the Mortal Kombat film was that it was PG-13. For a game that was, so over the top as far as its violence, and, so much so that parents were, the boards were all up in arms about it and trying to keep it out of the hands of children, that they gave it a PG-13 rating. And I understand, because it's a video game adaptation, you want it to be as accessible to people as possible. But
We'll see. Again, just absolutely a great performance as far as the movie is concerned. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I know TJ did it too, and we'll see what happens with its namesake all these years later. 31 years later with Mortal Kombat 2. As long as it doesn't end up being like the Mortal Kombat 2 in the movies back in the 90s. That sequel, however good and however lovely Mortal Kombat was, the sequel is the exact opposite.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But I think with the Mortal Kombat, it's you have to appreciate it for what it was. It was a timestamp of the 90s. So if you want to know what 90s was, go back and look at Mortal Kombat. Techno music, clean fight choreography, good casting. The acting was a little uneven at times, but good casting. And it was just simple. It was simple. It wasn't convoluted. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't, just too much. It was what we needed it to be at the time. So it had no business being as good as it was, and it was good. So if you want a great time step into the 90s and a fun watch for the
night. Absolutely.
Maybe some not so great.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Absolutely. But Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Oh yeah, it was Annihilation in more ways than one. And I'll leave it at that, my friend.
Absolutely. I remember that Annihilation. Annihilation wasn't as good. Wasn't as good.
It was bad. You could say it's
okay, it was bad. It was bad.
It annihilated a lot of people watching it, and I'll just leave it at that. But if you have thoughts on the original Mortal Kombat movie, that's our retro review of the week. Please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. Any last thoughts before we head on out?
I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go. I've been in this airport for about 3-4 hours now. I'm ready to go home. But other than that, thanks for having me on. I can't wait to do it again.
Can't wait to do it indeed. And you're not taking Spirit, so I am very thankful for that. And
nobody is anymore.
Nobody is.
Nobody is anymore.
Sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does. It really does.
So for TJ Johnson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great